All right, guys, here goes my attempt at doing this recording thing. So this was the baby steps homework to kind of get you started on everything. So the first section was just doing matching definitions. So number 1 says the genotypes made of the same alleles. Our key word there is same. So remember, our prefix for same is homo. So homozygous is going to be the answer to number 1. Okay, so that's D. Different forms of genes for a single trait. So what this is referring to is alleles. Remember that genes, you can have hair genes, you can have eye genes, you can have skin color genes, but then you have variations, so different forms of those genes. So you can have blue eyes, brown eyes, green eyes, all that kind of thing, but it's still for that single trait of eye color. So that's going to be alleles. The gene that is always expressed. So this is the thing that's always happening, what you always see. You will always see a dominant trait because it will overpower the recessive allele. The gene that is expressed only when in the homozygous state. So remember our prefix homo, that means same. So the only way that I will see the homozygous state, see the trait, is when it's in its homozygous trait. So remember, I can see dominant when it's in the homozygous state. I can also see the dominant when it's in the heterozygous state. So the correct answer for this would be E, recessive, because the only way I'm going to see a recessive trait is when it's in the homozygous state. All right, number 5, genotypes made of 2 different alleles. So remember, different, our prefix for different is hetero. So this would be a heterozygous trait, so C. All right, moving on. The next section said below of each of the following words are choices. Circle the choices that are examples of each of those words. So dominant allele. Remember, we have 2 alleles for every trait that we have. Sometimes you have dominant and sometimes you have recessive. The way that we represent dominant alleles are with capital letters. So what you would do is circle all of the capital letters. Okay. Next comes a recessive. Remember, recessive alleles are designated by lowercase letters. So you'd circle the lowercase alleles. Okay. All right, number 8, homozygous dominant. Remember, when we were talking about this, dominant's represented by a capital letter, recessive by a lowercase. So this says homozygous dominant. Homo meaning same. So you have 2 letters. So dominant's capital. So capital, capital, they're the same, dominant. Capital lower, they're different. Capital, capital, they're same and they're dominant. Lower, lower, they are homozygous, they are the same, but they're not dominant. They don't have capital letters. Little u, big R, little r, big T. There's our another one. So there's homozygous dominant. So we had 3 homozygous dominant. All right, homozygous recessive. Again, homo meaning same. Recessive, remember, is represented by that lowercase letter. So lower, lower, they're the same. That's homozygous recessive. Capital lower, capital, capital, capital lower, 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 there it is, homozygous recessive. Next one is capital lower, and then lower, lower. So we had 3 homozygous recessive. All right, number 10 reads, genotypes in which the dominant allele must show. So remember, like we talked about up in 1 through 5, we have 3 possibilities of our allele combinations. We can have capital, capital, known as homozygous dominant. We can have capital lower, which is known as heterozygous, and we can have lower, lower, which is homozygous recessive. So let's just pick a color for fun, just to help ourselves out. So if capital A is red and lowercase a is white. And again, I'm just picking something to make it easier, to make it real to you, so that way we can get a more of an explanation on this. So if I have capital A, what color will I see? I'm going to see red. All right, if I have capital lower, what color will I see? I'm going to see red. The reason for that, remember, is that dominant allele overpowers the lowercase allele. So just like for the definition of dominate, think about like you're going to dominate somebody in basketball. You're going to overpower them. You're going to make them so you don't notice them anymore, so that you don't see that white allele. You're only going to see red. All right, so then lower, that's homozygous recessive. That's when I'm going to see the white color. So genotypes in which the dominant alleles must show. I know now that I put some colors to it, I realize that I'm going to see that dominant trait whenever I have a homozygous dominant or when I have a heterozygous. So there's my homozygous dominant. There's a heterozygous, homozygous dominant. What's this one? Yep, that's homozygous recessive, heterozygous, homozygous dominant, and heterozygous. All right, then we take it to number 11, genotypes in which recessive genes must show. So remember, the only time I'm going to see the recessive trait is when I'm homozygous recessive. So I'm looking for homozygous recessive examples. Only found 2 there. Good job. All right, let's keep on rolling. All right, number 12, below are the genotypes for some of the characteristics of the organisms in your area. Decide whether the genotypes are heterozygous, you'll put a H, homozygous dominant, you'll put a HD, or homozygous recessive, you'll put a HR. So capital A, that is homozygous dominant. Capital F, lower F, that's heterozygous. Capital H, homozygous dominant. Capital R, lower R, that's heterozygous. Oops. Little a, that's homozygous recessive. Little h, that's homozygous recessive. Capital H, little h, that's heterozygous. Little r, that's homozygous recessive. Capital A, that is heterozygous. Little f, homozygous recessive. Big F, homozygous dominant. Big R, homozygous dominant. Okay, next it says which of the genotypes in number 1, that was a mistake, I should have just said above, so these guys up here, that's what it's referring to, would be purebred homozygous. So I'm going to switch colors for a second. So I'm going to circle all the ones up at the top that are homozygous. Now you're like, homozygous, we got 2 types. There's homozygous dominant and there's homozygous recessive. Well, I use the word purebred. Purebred just means any organism that's homozygous, regardless if it's homozygous dominant or homozygous recessive, because purebred means whenever I have self-pollination or asexual reproduction, I'm going to receive an identical copy, so they're going to be identical. So with the purebred, I'm going to circle all my homozygous ones, even the recessive ones. Those are still homozygous. Okay, I think I got them all. Yep, okay. And then which of the genotypes would be a hybrid? Remember, hybrid is just going to be another word that means heterozygous. So you could see either one of those words, hybrid or heterozygous, and you need to know they mean the same thing. They both mean capital letter, lower letter. When you see purebred or homozygous, you know that either means capital letter, or lowercase letter. Okay, they mean the same thing. So we're going to just leave the hybrid ones. We're going to say they're the ones that are not circled. Okay. All right, let's keep on moving. So if I get down to number 13, use the information below to determine the possible phenotypes. Remember, the difference between a phenotype and a genotype is the genotype are the alleles, the letters. The phenotype is the physical description. So it tells me green body is capital A, dominant, to yellow, lowercase a, body color. So capital A, I'm going to see a green body. Capital A, lowercase a, I'm going to see a green body. lowercase a, I'm going to see a yellow body. Okay, long feathers is dominant to short feathers. Capital F, long. Capital F, long. Lowercase f, short. Okay. All right, now this next one, they did the reverse. So here, use the information below concerning the phenotypes to determine the genotype for short legs, capital H, are dominant to long legs, lowercase h. So short legs could be capital H, or it could also be capital H, lowercase h. Remember that both the homozygous dominant and the heterozygous will show that dominant trait. On the long legs, the only genotypic possibility is little h. I know it's cut off here, but we'll go ahead and just keep going with the long beaks. So long beaks, capital R, is dominant to short beaks, lowercase r. So long beaks, again, could be the homozygous dominant or the heterozygous. And then the short beaks, it could only be homozygous recessive. All right, I'm going to stop it there on page 1, and hopefully I didn't mess this up, and check for the next copy for page 2, the right button.